right, it's now 10 minutes after 7. Welcome back. And in case you are joining us, this is Morning Express and it's time for Political Point. A quick reintroduction of the panel that we have this morning before we begin the discussion. I'm joined by Elizabeth Kimkung, Karanja Kabage and Dennis Nthumbe. This morning, we would like to discuss and look at the different kinds of government or governing systems. And there has been proposals that it's time for Kenya to go to the referendum. And one of the things that some of the leaders have actioned or said needs to be changed is the kind of system we have. Why? Because with the current presidential system, there are those who feel it's a winner takes it all kind of a system, and that has given us problems every 5 years. Why? There's a question of inclusivity, there's a question of too much power vested in the president, and the proposal is to have a parliamentary system which would have a prime minister. And then that kind of separates the power. So we want to look at some of those differences, and you're welcome to participate in this conversation. Do let us know what your thoughts are. The hashtag is KTN Morning Express. If you'd like to tweet, it's at KTN Kenya, or you can tweet me directly, and that's at Michael G. Gitonga. Let me start with you, Karanja Kabage, by maybe just giving us a brief definition of the current system that we have, and possibly what would be the varying difference between the presidential and parliamentary system.
Well, thank you, Michael. We have a presidential system, and this presidential system is is a generic statement of saying presidential system. Because, for example, if you talk about the U.S. presidential system, the Russian presidential system, South African presidential system, and Kenyan presidential system, they are different, but they are called presidential. And they're different in terms of how. Take, for example, Kenyan presidential system. A president in Kenya is a person who is elected by having more than 50 plus 1% of the votes at the presidential system. A president in the US is elected on what we call electoral colleges, right? A president in South Africa is elected from a majority of the party.
The party.
You get what I mean? Now, in Russia, it's totally different. So when you talk about presidential system, you have to be very specific. Which one are you talking about? Our Kenyan system is such that you, once elected as a president, before 2010, the president we had in Kenya was even more powerful than the president we have today. For example, it was his duty to appoint Chief Justice. Today, you cannot appoint Chief Justice. It was his duty to appoint the judges of the Court of Appeal. Today, he cannot do anything. Even the courts or even the cabinet. He only nominates the cabinet, and the cabinet is confirmed by the National Assembly. So that is one set of looking at the presidential in a very quick way. Now, the critical thing about presidential system here is public participation. We directly elect a president.
Correct.
In this country. And it's different from the US. The US, the election of a president is not direct public, but it is through what I call electoral colleges. That's why you find, for example, Hillary Clinton
she may have
had
won the
64
majority.
million voters, while Donald Trump had about 61 million voters. 3 million voters, the difference. Now, in this country, a president has had his powers very reduced, very reduced. That is one of the system that we have. Now, if you are saying that you want a parliamentary system, even parliamentary systems are different.
In different jurisdictions.
In different jurisdictions and so forth and so forth.
Okay.
If you take, for example, the UK, where you have a prime minister who is the head of government, all right? And the head of state is the Queen. It's totally different from the one you have in Canada, for example. You have a prime minister in Canada, but the prime minister in Canada is there are so many things.
They're different. And maybe we'll try and restrict it to what works for us, because there are all those other jurisdictions that we have. Yes. But you talked about public participation. And according to PLO, Lumumba, he was in charge of a certain organ that went out to find out what Kenyans would be seeking. And let's listen into what he had to say.
the people that we talked to when we were collecting the views and whose views we interpreted were telling us that we don't want an executive that is not accountable to the people. And that is why you see that in the Boma's draft, our recommendation based on the people's views is that we should have a president who is not ceremonial. That president will have certain executive powers, but the executive powers are divided between the president and the prime minister, who will be present in parliament. We also suggested that there should be a vice president. We also suggested that there should be a deputy prime minister, 2 deputy prime ministers, because we are also conscious that because of our ethnic composition and our peculiarities as a nation, there are certain things that we may do in order to hold the nation together.
All right, and Elizabeth, one thing we cannot ignore in our country as we contextualize this is the uniqueness of our politics and the fact that it has for a long time been divided on tribal, lines. That being one of the reasons why some of the leaders suggest that we need a change. What is your feeling in terms of the current system that we have, where we have an executive that is separate from the judiciary? It is an executive, but also with trimmed powers compared to what it was before, but still very powerful.
Thank you very much. I think the presidential system that we have today is still very powerful because we also have a lot of gaps in the law. When you look at the Constitution today, although we had a promulgation and a new Constitution in 2010, there was a lot of gaps left. That's why the president can sort of call some shots. Mm-hmm. My opinion about this whole thing,
would you envisage a position or a system where the president had almost no power?
No, I don't think so, because it would not really work for us. And the reason I say that, first and foremost, you have to realize we are many tribes in Kenya, right? And a lot of people feel left out, especially the tribes who claim to be marginalized, or who are marginalized for that matter. So I would say that the premiership would work better for us. Why do I say that? Every community will feel represented. Even if they had a deputy prime minister, a deputy president, everybody will feel they're part of the pie.
And let's talk about inclusion. What is inclusion? Is it having your tribesman on the table sitting?
I don't think it's tribesman per se, but we have regions in this country, right? And I will just say there's probably northeastern, there's coast, there's western. So if they don't have some sort of representation from that particular region, they feel they're left out. Yeah, we have a situation where if it's the winner takes it all, then the powers and everything is concentrated in one person. And Kenyans are not looking at each other as Kenyans when we're here, but they'll say, oh, that person from that tribe is sitting there, their tribesman is benefiting. It may not be the case, but it's a mentality that has grown with us that will take a long time for people to realize that this is not it. By the time we get into that maturity, the best way would be to have the shared platform where everybody feels they're part and parcel of this country.
All right.
And they feel that they own part of the country.
Exactly. Dennis, is it a lack of laws that we have that has got us where we are? One might say that we are full of laws and institutions that are there to ensure there is equity. However, people still feel that sometimes they're excluded. What is your...
I think what is bothering Kenya is not lack of laws. I think, to be very honest, I think there's over-legislation in this country. I think the issue is greed within leadership and government-sanctioned greed and corruption. Because if I look at it, if you look at the presidential system that we currently have, there's decentralization of power into institutions. And that's a good thing. But also, for me, the presidential system would work for this country because, A, we are not matured in terms of democracy. Political parties are still very fickle.
What is maturity, democracy?
Maturity, if you look at it, the parliamentary system is that it is where, then whether it's a prime minister or a president, sort of, is then closely related to the legislature. And it is the legislature that then appoints him at the end of the day. And if you look at those democracies that have a parliamentary system, is that then the PM has no fixed term. And also, There's a time, I think it's Norway or whatever it is, or Denmark, that they had for about 541 days, they didn't have a premiership. So what happens is that the legislature can wake up any day and then decide to throw you out of office with nothing that is consequential at the end of the day. So presidential system gives you a clear leader with a clear mandate, vested that power, and that power is vested by the people. And also, we have divided power where we have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary being independent of each other. But if you look at a parliamentary system, is whereby the legislature and the executive are closely related and power is concentrated within there. Now, if you talk about a country where political parties are passes, personal passes, or if you could allow me to say this, perhaps Viagra to prop whatever leaders that there are, is that then we don't have mature institutions to prop up a country within a parliamentary system thereabout. Is that I would rather that we focus on a presidential system where, even in terms of war, by the way, the countries that have stood strong are countries that have a presidential system where there's a clear leader. What I'd want to see is then how can we introduce checks and balances within the presidency and also decentralize a level of power within institutions and get those institutions also accountable in a way. But I'm opposed to a parliamentary system whereby, look at our parliament today. Can you imagine the filth that is in that parliament? Them deciding who is our leader, when he sits there, what he does. How then can that leader then report and be accountable to a legislature that is full of filth? A legislature that is not strong. Political parties that are collapsing. Today, the fights in Jubilee, the fights in ODM, which political party in this country is solid enough to make sure that they give us strong transitional democracy and they proper country? Because as at now, we consider that Kenya is at war. Whatever it is that we're fighting that is coming to fight us, you understand? So, parliamentary system then requires and even when we are going now into the boundaries review, the electoral boundaries review and all that, you're seeing the conversation that is going on. The Kikuyus coming and saying we have numbers, the Northeastern group saying we have numbers. They want to populate parliaments so that all of them or each of them can control thereabout. So I don't think we are in a place where we have mature politicians, B, mature legislature, and C, political parties that are astute enough to give us that kind of stability that we need to be able to shoulder a parliamentary system that will not take this country to dogs. And by the way, democratically, we are the edge of the new constitution. And we haven't even constitutionalized that constitution. Yet, we are talking about changing the forms of government.
All right. Let me hear from Elizabeth.
Maybe I can also just remind him that in this country, we've had 2 prime ministers. And our founding father, Jomo Kenyatta, President Kenyatta, was a prime minister before he became president. The next prime minister came in when it was the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, and that was when they signed the National Accord. And we all saw that when they signed the National Accord, it brought peace into the country, because that fight that was going on, that was tearing Kenyans apart, that had made many Kenyans lose their lives, stopped overnight when that happened. With those 2 examples, I mean, I'm actually probably interjecting on what he's saying. With those 2 examples that happened at a crucial time, the latter one probably being the most recent that we can all see, and we all noticed that when that happened immediately, it cooled down temperatures. That just leads to
Not within a parliamentary system.
No, let me just
finish. The system wasn't parliamentary.
Let me just finish. That just tells you that Kenyans want to share. You know, they don't agree in this one thing. But immediately that National Accord was signed and the Right Honorable became Prime Minister, they could work together.
And there's still a question to be raised even in that regard.
Correct.
And we're seeing that handshake even now. And the question here being, we have such powerful leaders who, at the point where they make a decision, Kenyans seem to follow them regardless of whether they've considered the results. And what is coming. And I can see Karanja Kabagi wants to come in. But Karanja, your thoughts on that, whether we have a mature democracy yet and mature political parties, because a parliamentary system ideally would be carried by the political parties that we have. And the political parties would be responsible for now electing the Prime Minister or Chancellor or whatever we're going to call that person who's going to be in charge of government. Are we there yet? Given that the political parties we have so far have been special purpose vehicles, purely for getting into power, and after that they dismantle.
I want to largely agree with Dennis, personally. And the reason is this. Our political parties are personal vehicles. They are not, people don't subscribe to a philosophy or an ideology. Therefore, anybody telling you that parliamentary system will operate without strong parties that are ideological, I think they are being mean with their words or with their meaning. The beauty with a presidential system is the stability. That, because when you don't have a monarch, a symbol of the national unity is usually the president. What you really need as a counterweight to that is that the parliament must be strong enough to be able to hold the executive to account. The governor or the devolved government system should be strong enough to be held to account by the citizens of the various counties. Now, the judiciary should be strong enough with very little of blemish, as we always say, as white as Caesar's wife, so to speak. All right? Meaning they are not corrupt. All right? Now, once you have a strong executive and a strong judiciary and a strong legislature and a functioning devolved government, this country can function. The other thing I want to say is this. You know, when you look at the history of the constitution making in this country, it began more than 20, 30 years before we even had a new constitutional dispensation in 2010, August 27th, when it was promulgated. Now, this constitution that we have is hardly 10 years. Hardly 10 years. And we want to change it. Now, Kenyans must realize we need stability. We need to see something mature enough so that if we are saying we want to review this constitution, it should be at least 20 years down the road.
When it's been tried and tested.
When it has been tried and tested.
Okay. All right.
But we are too impatient as a nation.
And one of the reasons why our leaders, and I say our leaders here because they're the ones who seem to set the pace for the rest of us, have said we need a constitutional review and that we can interrogate, is purely because of the word inclusivity. And I want us to listen to Senior Counsel James Orengo, who is a senior politician in this country, is also synonymous with, democracy, fight for democracy in this country, what he had to say in regards to inclusivity in government. Let's listen into James Orengo.
Turn back to a system of a parliamentary system of democracy if you are going to have inclusivity in the Republic of Kenya.
We must revisit our national constitution on governance so that nobody wins and takes it all.
That because the presidential system of government is a winner take it all, then the solution to that, Mr. Speaker, is we adopt a parliamentary system with a ceremonial president and create a federal system of government in Kenya.
Where I disagree with him is that you can have 47 presidents in this country. Mr. Speaker, you should agree with us that we need to have a more consolidated system where we have, say, 14 regions with presidents.
So the question they're dealing with here, or the challenge they're dealing with here, is inclusivity. What is this inclusivity? Does it mean that we already have a bloated,
yes, we do.
A bloated parliament, given the number that we have, and still we're not satisfied as Kenyans to feel that my person is there? What is this inclusivity?
As I said, it's just an internalized greed. Because if you look at our, first of all, we have a unitary state that's, government and everything is controlled by the central government with an aspect of devolution. So devolution means that everybody plays a part in nation building and in developing the area where they stay. The locality, development in this country begins at your locality, your MCA. You come up as the father and have family, then you come up as a society. That society then picks one representative called an MCA and send them into the county office with a mandate of exactly what they want within their locality. Which other representation do you want? Then, other than that, you still have somebody called MP, the legislator, who legislates on your behalf, of course, nationally. Then, on top of that, then you have the senator. On top of that, you have the women rep. On top of that, you have the governor. Already, that is bottom heavy. This issue in this country of dying and killing each other for the presidency, can you imagine the type of anarchy that will be here with a parliamentary system where these politicians are controlling who is the PM today, who is the PM tomorrow, who is that? And you know, the good Senator Senior Counsel Rengo, he's holding brief for somebody. Let him hold brief for Kenyans. No, not for his autocrats, whatever they are. We have a system that is already overrepresented. What we need to do is ensure that we actualize devolution. Why do we want to kill devolution? Hardly to its maturity. Just when it started showing teeth and when it started eating githeri is when now we want to kill it and bring another system that we don't even know. And let me tell you what, within our African context, we believe in one leader who is working for us. We don't believe in anything that has two heads is a monster. You understand? We don't want, the parliamentary system is a monster. We don't want that. We want clear headship with accountability. We want strong institutions, because if we had a strong judiciary, if we had a strong IBC, if we had a strong police force at the end of the day, look at how helpless sometimes the president says, I have given you everything. I have given you all the money. All the laws are there. Why are you not fighting corruption? At the end of the day, why? We stripped off some powers from the presidency. Now imagine a prime minister at the behest of a corrupt legislature at the end of the day. So the truth is that this country, the citizen participation, and my good elder here mentioned it, is that Kenyans themselves are averse towards citizen participation. They don't even know what the MCA does from noon to day at the end of the day. They don't even participate in multi-party architecture. There's no involvement from the political party aspect. So the only involvement that Kenya talks about is at the ballot box. Voting. And when you're talking at the ballot box, the political party has already decided for you everything that you don't even believe in. So we have to look at devolution, and we have to actualize devolution. When we kill devolution, this country will go down.
Elizabeth, your thoughts on devolution and the fact that devolution was supposed to, first of all, ensure that equity. Let me redefine equity here, not to mean my tribesman or your tribesman or anybody's tribesman as part of that leadership, but to ensure, one, resources are available to all. Two, representation, which we've already, Dhumbi has clearly defined that there could be over-representation by virtue of the fact that we already have the devolved government, and at that level, we as citizens of Kenya should feel represented. Now, question here being, is changing the constitution something that Kenya is ready for now, when we've not even given the current constitution enough time for us to test it and try it?
I think the general opinion, people want to change. Right? You hear it from the lowest level that they want some change. And sometimes I'm saying if people are out there asking for something, give it to them. Let's see what they'll come up with. Secondly, yes, the wage bill is pretty high. We are overrepresented. I don't see why we have 47 governors, on a serious note. That was part of the new constitution, but I believe that we can reduce the counties and have less counties, have less MCAs, hence less members of parliament, right?
That will save us in terms of the wage bill, but does that get the services to the people?
It should, because we had 8 provinces for the longest time in this country.
I think we still had the same problem that we have now of lack of inclusivity.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying we had 8 provinces. This constitution, as Karanja Kabage has said, is not even 9 years old. And we got independence in 1963. And from 1963 to 2010, we operated on 8 provinces. And it worked. Yeah, some of us were born at that time, the province was there.
As much as you say that it worked, that was still the period in time that some felt extremely marginalized.
I agree. And after having 47 counties, where we have devolution, where we have governors, where monies go down to every county, people still feel marginalized.
They still do,
so,
but the thing is, the laws and regulations of how that is supposed to happen are there. The question is whether they're being implemented or not. But in terms of having that equity, it is there within the law.
Yes, it is. But I'm saying they still complained after 47 counties, after giving monies to this county. And you'd find every other day there's a governor who's being accused of squandering money. So when you look at it and you say that devolution has worked, but people are still complaining. So, you know, you weigh it out, it's like
I'm not sure people will ever stop complaining.
I think people are not complaining.
Let me put it this way.
Kibwana is functioning.
Yeah,
but that's 1 out of 47.
Let me put it this way. One of the elephant in the room of our nation is, first and foremost, Kenyans have come to the point where they realize we need to build a strong economy. That's the first thing. If you don't build a strong economy where goods and services are available to the citizens, it doesn't matter whether you come up with a parliamentary system or you come up with whatever system, people are going to complain because when the road, the rubber meets the road at the point where the citizen is satisfied of the following. If I go to hospital, I will find services that I need. If I send my kid to school, I'll find a classroom of 40 students or 50 students, not 100 students. If I have a road, that road has no potholes. If I have a need for housing, I have access to housing. If I go to the supermarket, the prices of food is not jacked the previous night. It is predictable. Now, until Kenyans get into the debate, and it's very sad because at the national level, you hardly find a serious discourse on how do we build the economy of this country. Because the bottom line is this. Why do we celebrate the United States of America? Why do we celebrate Korea? Why do we celebrate Japan? Why are we celebrating China? Why are we celebrating Singapore? Why are we celebrating Malaysia? It's because those nations have been able to figure out a solution to the people's problem. And the solution to the people's problem is build a strong economy where every one of us partakes. Now, governance becomes, the structure of government now becomes even easier to be able to do what? To be able to prosecute. Today, when you see the president, you are looking for handout. When you see a governor, you are looking for handout. When you see a member of parliament, you are looking for handout. When you see MCA, you are looking for a handout.
And maybe they have made the system that way to their advantage.
Exactly.
Actually manipulated so that you live on their
Let me conclude.
Exactly.
The reason why that happens is because when we are electing our leaders, listen to their programs.
If they have any.
If there is any program? There is nothing. What we do, we start bringing in tribal hegemony. This community is against this community, or that community is against this community. But that's a lot of nonsense. The real issue is, where are the goods and where are the services?
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have to wind up because of time. I need your closing comments very briefly, and I'll start with you, Dennis. Help Kenyans understand that at the end of the day, when we go to the ballot, we are literally predicting our future for the next 5 years. And what Karanja Kabage brings is an important point in terms of the economy. At the end of the day, if I have an empty stomach, if I do not know where I'm going to get school fees from, if I don't know where my child is going to work when they graduate, then we completely continue perpetuating the issue of corruption, because at the end of the day, I'll need food at the end of the day. So we need to tie this down. What is it that Kenya needs in terms of moving on forward, in terms of governance?
That's a very critical question. The first thing that Kenya needs is citizen participation. And that's the greatest aspect on accountability that the Constitution has given us. Not just the Constitution, even God Almighty says that I have given you these things and you must be accountable to them. Lack of citizen participation in this country. Number one, it's at an all-time low, even when the citizens are complaining. They have no civic responsibility or guilt I wonder when the citizens are telling the president to work and deliver, the police to work and deliver, yet every day they have no role in their civic duty of ensuring that their MCA delivers, their police commander delivers, their MP delivers, their senator delivers. The citizen in this country is ignorant on matters of their civic duty. The first thing they must do is get involved politically. And getting involved doesn't mean voting. If you only get involved during voting time, you're, by the way, bringing this country down. You must get involved in local development, policy development, join a political party at the end of the day and decide who runs and what the policies of that political party is at the end of the day. Get to know your institutions, get to know people. I was shocked even at the onset of terrorism, people don't even know their division or police commander. The second thing we need to do is let us actualize devolution. There are strong men in this country, men of purpose and men of vigor who have shown us that devolution can work. Professor Kivuda Kibwana and many other stories that are not being written. Today, a region in Kisii is one of the strongest economies in this country. Central Bank is building there. You have more banks than any other region. Why? Because the governors and the politicians have decided, you know what? We want to bring peace and prosperity into this region. Development is local, not national at the end of the day. If you build your area and any discussions of lifting devolution of people, collapsing back to 8 regions is collapsing this country. It is taking your ability as a citizen to build this country block by block. So I'm just going to say those two things. Get involved civically. You don't have to call it politics because they say politics is for politicians and it's dirty. It's fine if you think it's dirty. But what is your civic role in terms of building your area? Number 2, actualize devolution at the end of the day. People are coming all the way from other countries, going to Makueni to learn. How is this man just doing? He's just doing his job. He's not doing a miracle or, you know, healing the sick or raising the dead. No. Kivuda Kibwana has just decided, you know what, I'm just going to be the governor who works at the end of the day. He's showing us that we can prop an entire hospital with just 37 million shillings. That is the Kenya that we want. And we want a constitution that we test in 20 years, not review it now.
All right, Elizabeth Kimkung, your closing comments.
Thank you very much. I think citizens have the power to elect the leaders and the right leaders. Citizens should actually elect the right people in office who can propel this country to greater heights and who can also protect their interests. It's all us at the end of the day. We may complain about our leaders, but we are the ones who go and cast our votes on the day of voting, even for the president. So it starts with us at the end of the day. And politics is in all of us. Because if we were not politicians, we would not wake up and go and vote as citizens. Right. So that is my
Karanja Kabage, your closing comments.
I have 2 things. One is that under the current constitution, the Independent and Electoral Boundaries Commission is charged with the mandate of civic education. There has been no single program that you can discern that goes towards that mandate. Secondly, under the Local Government Act, or rather under the County Government Act, Cap 265, it is the role of the governors to provide, again, civic education for the citizens. And that's what my friend Dennis is talking about here. The knowledge of our citizens as to how they are governed is completely put in the shelf until the day of election, or during the election period. So citizens of this country must demand from the institutions that they have created to be able to provide them with the services that they are due and they deserve. The second thing I want to say is this. This country, every citizen must frown against impunity. You cannot allow people to either violate the law or to steal from the citizens and get away with it. Get away with it. Because that means citizens are being told theft is not a problem. Let's go to church and pray for it, and it will be blessed. Now, this is really a situation that is pathetic, and we must make sure as citizens of this country, we must
come against it.
Not countenance the whole issue of impunity.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have to wind up right there because of time. Thank you very much. We have had Elizabeth Kimkung, who's the national chair for KANU Women's Congress, Karanja Kabage, who's a lawyer, and Dennis Ndom.